My father shoved my daughter so hard at Christmas dinner that she hit the floor in front of everyone. She's 10 years old. He looked down at her and said those words. That seat is for my real grandkid. The room went silent. 14 relatives watched. Nobody helped her up. Nobody said a word. My mother held her fork mid-air like she'd forgotten how to breathe. My brother looked at his plate. My sister stared at the wall. And me? I stood there for 3 seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then I walked over to my daughter. I helped her up. I brushed off her dress. I kissed her forehead. And I said 4 words that made my mother drop her wine glass and my father's face turn the color of ash. 4 words that would end everything. 4 words that would cost him more than he ever imagined. My name is Sarah. I'm 35. I'm a pediatric nurse. I'm a single mother. And my daughter Emma is adopted. This is the story of how my father tried to humiliate us in front of the entire family, and how I made sure he never forgot what happened next. If you're new here, please subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Back to the moment I realized my family had never truly accepted us. 3 months before Christmas, I was living in a small rental house across town. Emma and I had been on our own for 2 years. The adoption was finalized when she was 7. She came from a troubled foster system. Her biological parents had lost custody when she was 4. By the time I met her, she was quiet, careful, and afraid of loud voices. She flinched when doors slammed. She apologized for things that weren't her fault. But she was smart. Brilliant, actually. She read books meant for teenagers. She drew pictures of families holding hands. And every night before bed, she would ask me the same question. Mommy, will you ever give me back? Every single night, I would hold her and tell her the same thing. Never. You are mine forever. Nothing will ever change that. And I meant it. I meant it more than anything I'd ever said in my life. But my family? They didn't see it that way. My father especially. He was old school. Bloodline obsessed. Family name. Legacy. All of that. When I told him I was adopting, he didn't say congratulations. He said, "Why would you raise someone else's mistake?" I should have cut him off right there. I know that now. But I didn't. I kept hoping. Kept thinking maybe he'd come around. Maybe once he met Emma, he'd see her the way I did. Sweet. Funny. Kind. Brave in ways most adults will never be. My mother was different. She smiled at Emma. She bought her a Christmas ornament the first year, but she never corrected my father. Not once. My brother and sister? They followed his lead. They treated Emma like a guest. Polite. Distant. Never rude, but never warm. Emma noticed. Kids always do. She stopped asking to visit Grandma and Grandpa. She stopped talking about them at school, and one night, about a month before Christmas, she asked me something that broke me in half. Mommy, do they not love me because I'm not real? I held her so tight I thought I'd crush her. I told her she was real. I told her she was loved. I told her they just didn't know how to show it yet. But deep down, I knew the truth. They didn't see her as family. They saw her as a charity case. A project. An outsider. And I had been making excuses for them for 3 years. Then came the invitation. My mother called in early December. She said they were hosting Christmas dinner at their house like always. She said the whole family would be there. My brother and his wife. My sister and her husband and their 2 kids. My uncle and aunt. My cousins. 14 people total. She said Emma was welcome too. Welcome. Not invited. Not excited to see her. Welcome. Like she was a +1. I almost said no. I almost told her we had other plans. But Emma overheard, and her face lit up. She said, "Mommy, are we really going to Grandma's for Christmas?" She said it with so much hope that I couldn't say no, so I said yes. I said we'd be there, And I told myself it would be fine. I told myself maybe this year would be different. Maybe they'd finally see her the way I did. Maybe Christmas would be the turning point. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Because what happened at that dinner table wasn't just cruel. It wasn't just rejection. It was calculated. It was public. And it was designed to humiliate my daughter in front of everyone she wanted to love her. And when it happened, when my father shoved her off that chair and said those words, something inside me snapped. Not in anger, not in sadness, in clarity. Cold, sharp, final clarity. I realized I had been protecting the wrong people. I had been giving chances to people who didn't deserve them. And I had been teaching my daughter that family means tolerating cruelty. That ends now. Christmas morning started quietly. Emma woke up early, around 6. I heard her moving around in her room, so I got up and made hot chocolate. We sat on the couch in our pajamas and opened the gifts I'd gotten her. A new sketchbook, colored pencils, a book series she'd been wanting. She smiled the whole time. She hugged me. She said, "This is the best Christmas ever, Mommy." And I thought, maybe it will be. Maybe today will be good. We got dressed around noon. I put Emma in a navy blue velvet dress I'd bought just for this. She looked beautiful. I did her hair in 2 braids. She stood in front of the mirror and smiled at herself. She said, "Do you think Grandpa will like my dress?" I swallowed the lump in my throat and said, "I think you look perfect." We arrived at my parents' house at 2. The driveway was already full. My brother's SUV, my sister's minivan, my uncle's truck. I parked on the street and we walked up to the front door. Emma held my hand. She was nervous. I could feel it. I rang the bell. My mother answered. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She said, "Oh good, you're here. Come in." No hug for Emma. No compliment on her dress. Just, "Come in." The house smelled like roast beef and cinnamon. The dining room table was set with the good china. My father's pride and joy. White plates with gold trim. Crystal glasses. Cloth napkins. Everything arranged like a magazine spread. Everyone was already in the living room. My brother, my sister, their kids, my aunt and uncle, my cousins. They all looked up when we walked in. A few people said hi, a few smiled, but nobody got up. Nobody came over to greet Emma. She stood next to me, quiet, gripping my hand. I led her to the couch and we sat down. My mother brought out appetizers, cheese and crackers, shrimp cocktail. My father came in from the kitchen holding a glass of whiskey. He looked at me. He looked at Emma. He nodded. That was it. Just a nod. No hello. No Merry Christmas. Nothing. Dinner was called at 3. We all moved to the dining room. The table was long, enough for everyone. My father sat at the head, my mother at the other end, my brother and his wife on one side, my sister and her family on the other. That left 2 seats near the middle. I walked toward them with Emma, but before we could sit, my father's voice cut through the room. Not there. I stopped. I turned to look at him. He was staring at Emma. He said it again. Not there. That seat is for family. I felt my stomach drop. I said, "Dad, she is family." He shook his head. He pointed to a folding chair in the corner, near the kitchen door, away from the table. He said, "She can sit there." The room went silent. My mother looked down. My brother shifted in his seat. My sister looked at her husband. Nobody said a word. Emma looked up at me. Her eyes were filling with tears. She whispered, "Mommy, where do I sit?" I was about to speak, about to say we're leaving, but then my father stood up. He walked over to us. He looked down at Emma, and he said, "That seat is for my real grandkid. Not you." Then he put his hand on her shoulder, and he shoved her. Hard. She stumbled backward. Her foot caught on the chair leg, and she fell. She hit the floor with a sound that echoed through the entire house. Her dress rode up. Her knee scraped the hardwood. She gasped. Not a cry. A gasp. Like the air had been knocked out of her. And still, nobody moved. I stood there for 3 seconds. Maybe less. Maybe more. Time felt strange, stretched out and frozen all at once. Emma was on the floor, her hands flat against the wood, her braids falling forward, her face turned away from everyone. I could see her shoulders shaking. She was trying not to cry, trying not to make a scene, trying to be small, invisible, good. Because that's what I'd taught her. Be polite. Be quiet. Don't make trouble. And in that moment, I hated myself for it. My father stepped back. He straightened his shirt. He looked at me. Not at her. At me. Like he was waiting for me to apologize. Like he expected me to gather her up and leave quietly. To slink out the back door and never mention this again. To protect him. To protect the family. To keep the peace. My mother still hadn't looked up. My brother was staring at his plate. My sister had her hand over her mouth, but she wasn't speaking. My uncle cleared his throat. My aunt looked uncomfortable, but no one moved. No one helped. No one said a word. I walked over to Emma. I knelt down beside her. I put my hand on her back. I said softly, "Baby, look at me." She turned her head. Her eyes were red. Her lip was trembling. But she wasn't crying. Not yet. I helped her stand. I smoothed down her dress. I checked her knee. It was scraped, but not bleeding. I kissed her forehead. I held her face in my hands. And I said, "You did nothing wrong. Do you hear me?" "Nothing." She nodded. I stood up. I turned to face my father. He was still standing there, arms crossed, face blank, like nothing had happened, like he'd just moved a chair. Not a child, not his granddaughter, not a little girl who had spent weeks excited to see him. I looked him in the eye, and I said 4 words. "I'll see you in court." The room erupted. My mother dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the floor. Red wine spreading across the white rug like blood. My father's face went pale. He said, "What did you just say?" I didn't repeat myself. I didn't need to. I took Emma's hand. I walked past the table, past my brother, past my sister, past every single person who had sat there and watched. I walked out the front door. I put Emma in the car. I buckled her seatbelt. I got in the driver's seat, and I drove home. Emma didn't speak the entire way. She stared out the window, her hands folded in her lap. When we got home, I helped her out of the dress. I put her in pajamas. I made her mac and cheese, her favorite. She ate 3 bites and said she wasn't hungry. I tucked her into bed. I sat beside her. I stroked her hair. And finally, she spoke. She said, "Mommy, why doesn't Grandpa love me?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to tell her he did, that he just didn't know how to show it. But I couldn't. Not anymore. So I told her the truth. I said, "Some people don't know how to love anyone but themselves, and that's not your fault. It's his." She closed her eyes. I stayed with her until she fell asleep. Then I went to my room. I sat on the edge of my bed, and I made 3 phone calls. The first was to a family lawyer I'd once worked with at the hospital. I left a message. The second was to my best friend, a paralegal. She answered. I told her what happened. She said, "I'll help you with whatever you need." The third call was to a documentation service. Because I wasn't just angry. I wasn't just hurt. I was strategic. I was a nurse. I knew how to stay calm under pressure. I knew how to document. I knew how to build a case. And I was going to make sure my father understood exactly what he'd done. The lawyer called me back the next morning. His name was David. Mid-50s, calm voice. He'd handled a case for a coworker of mine 2 years ago. Custody dispute. He won. I told him everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to be honest. Do you want an apology or do you want consequences?" I didn't hesitate. I said, "Consequences." He said, "Good. Because apologies are cheap and they don't change behavior." We met that afternoon at his office. I brought Emma. I didn't have anyone to watch her, and I didn't want to leave her alone. David had a box of toys in his waiting room. Emma sat on the floor and colored while we talked in his office. He explained the options: civil suit for intentional infliction of emotional distress, possible assault charges depending on how the police viewed the physical contact, restraining order, grandparent rights termination if they tried to fight back. He said, "This won't be easy. Your family will close ranks. They'll say you're overreacting. They'll paint you as vindictive. Are you ready for that?" I said, "I've been ready my whole life." He smiled. Not a happy smile, a knowing one. He said, "Let's get started." We spent 2 hours going over everything: dates, details, witnesses. I told him about the 14 people in that room. I told him about my mother's silence, my brother's cowardice, my sister's complicity. He took notes. He recorded my statement. He asked about prior incidents. I told him everything: the comments, the exclusion, the way they treated Emma like a guest in her own family. He asked if I had any documentation. I pulled out my phone. I had text messages, voicemails, photos. I had a video Emma had taken on my phone at Thanksgiving the year before. My father in the background saying, "Adoption is just expensive babysitting." I'd kept it. Not because I thought I'd need it, but because some part of me knew. Some part of me always knew it would come to this. David looked at the video. He looked at me. He said, "This is good. This is really good. We have a strong case." He drafted a letter. Legal, formal, cold. It outlined the incident. It referenced witnesses. It stated our intent to pursue legal action unless specific conditions were met. A formal written apology to Emma, acknowledgement of harm, agreement to attend family therapy, financial restitution for therapy costs for Emma, and a legally binding agreement that my father would have no contact with Emma unless supervised and approved by me. David said, "We're not asking for money beyond therapy costs. We're asking for accountability. If he refuses, we escalate. If he fights, we bury him." I signed the paperwork. He said the letter would be sent via certified mail. My father would have to sign for it. He'd know it was coming. He'd know it was serious. I took Emma home. That night, I sat her down. I said, "Emma, I need you to know something. What happened at Grandpa's house was wrong. It was not your fault. And I'm making sure it never happens again." She looked at me. She said, "Are we in trouble?" I said, "No, baby." He is. 3 days later, the letter was delivered. I got the notification on my phone. Signed for by Richard Callahan, my father. I imagined him opening it, reading it, realizing this wasn't going away, that I wasn't backing down, that I wasn't the same daughter who used to apologize for taking up space. My phone rang an hour later. It was my mother. I didn't answer. She called again. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was shaking. She said, "Sarah, please. You're tearing this family apart. Call me, please." I deleted it. Then my brother called. I didn't answer. Then my sister. I didn't answer. I blocked all of them. Because I didn't owe them explanations. I didn't owe them peace. I didn't owe them anything. I owed Emma everything. And I was finally giving it to her. A week went by. Silence. Then my father's lawyer contacted David. They wanted to negotiate. David called me. He said, "They're scared." Good. We set up a meeting. Neutral location. A conference room at David's office. My father was required to attend. My mother could come if she wanted. My siblings were not invited. The meeting was scheduled for January 5th, 2 weeks after Christmas, 2 weeks after my daughter hit the floor. I didn't tell Emma where I was going. I told her I had a work meeting. My best friend watched her. The day of the meeting, I wore black slacks and a blazer. Professional. Calm. I wasn't going in there as the daughter who wanted approval. I was going in there as the mother who would burn the world down to protect her child. I arrived 10 minutes early. David was already there. He briefed me. He said, "Let me do the talking. If they try to provoke you, stay calm. Don't engage emotionally. We're here for one reason: results." My father arrived exactly on time. My mother was with him. They looked older, tired. My father's jaw was tight. My mother's eyes were red. She'd been crying. They sat across from us. My father's lawyer sat beside him, a man in his 60s. Expensive suit. He started talking. He said this was all a misunderstanding, that my father didn't mean to hurt Emma, that it was a stressful day, that emotions were high. David cut him off. He said, "Your client physically shoved a 10-year-old child and told her she wasn't real family, in front of 14 witnesses. There's no misunderstanding here." The room went quiet. My father finally looked at me. He said, "Sarah, this is ridiculous. I'm your father. You can't sue me." I didn't blink. I said, "Watch me." My mother reached for his hand. She said, "Please, can we just talk about this?" David said, "We're not here to talk. We're here to present terms." He slid a document across the table. The same terms from the letter: apology, therapy, restitution, supervision. My father didn't even look at it. He said, "I'm not apologizing for disciplining a child in my own home." David said, "You didn't discipline her. You assaulted her." My father stood up. He said, "I'm done here." His lawyer grabbed his arm. He said, "Richard, sit down." My father sat, but his face was red. His hands were shaking. His lawyer leaned over and whispered something to him. They went back and forth for a minute. Finally, my father looked at David. He said, "What happens if I don't agree?" David said, "We file a civil suit. We pursue criminal charges. We subpoena every person in that room. We put this in front of a judge, and we let the court decide if shoving a child because she's adopted constitutes assault and emotional abuse." My mother started crying. She said, "Sarah, please, she's family. Don't do this." I looked at her. I said, "Where were you?" She blinked. I said it again. "Where were you when he shoved her? Where were you when she hit the floor? Where were you when I needed you to be her grandmother?" She didn't answer. She just cried. My father's lawyer cleared his throat. He said, "We need time to discuss this." David said, "You have 48 hours. After that, we file." They left. My father didn't look at me. My mother did. She looked broken. Part of me felt bad. A small part. The part that still remembered being her daughter. But the bigger part, the mother part, felt nothing. Because sympathy is earned, and she hadn't earned it. I walked out of that office with my head high. David walked me to my car. He said, "You did great." I said, "What do you think they'll do?" He said, "Honestly, I think they'll fold." I drove home. I picked up Emma. I made dinner. I didn't tell her what happened. But that night when I tucked her in, she said, "Mommy, you seem different." I said, "Different how?" She said, "Stronger." I kissed her forehead. I said, "That's because I am." 46 hours later, David called. They agreed. All of it. The apology, the therapy, the restitution, the supervised contact clause, everything. My father's lawyer sent over a signed agreement, legally binding, notarized. David read it to me over the phone. I sat on my couch. Emma was at school. The house was quiet. When he finished, I said, "What does this mean?" He said, "It means you won." I didn't feel like I'd won. I felt tired, sad, relieved, but not victorious. Winning would have been having a family that loved my daughter from the start. This wasn't winning. This was survival. David said the apology letter would be delivered within 5 days. Handwritten, addressed to Emma. My father had to write it himself. No lawyer drafts, no templates. His words, his accountability. It arrived 4 days later. A small envelope. My father's handwriting on the front. Emma's name. I opened it first. I read it alone in my kitchen. It was short. 3 paragraphs. He acknowledged what he did. He said it was wrong. He said Emma deserved better. He said he was sorry. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't emotional. But it was there. In writing. Signed. I read it 3 times. Then I called David. I said, "Is this enough?" He said, "Legally, yes. Emotionally, that's up to you." I thought about it. I thought about what Emma needed. Not what I wanted. What she needed. She needed closure. She needed to know she mattered. She needed to hear it. So I called my father. First time since Christmas. He answered on the second ring. His voice was flat. He said, "Hello." I said, "I got the letter." He didn't respond. I said, "I'm going to read it to Emma. If she wants to see you after that, it will be supervised. At my house. On my terms. If you ever disrespect her again, this agreement becomes a restraining order. Do you understand?" He said, "I understand." I said, "Good." I hung up. That evening, I sat Emma down. I told her Grandpa had sent her a letter. Her face went pale. She said, "Is he mad at me?" I said, "No, baby. He's not mad. He's sorry." I read her the letter. She listened. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just listened. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Does he mean it?" I said, "I think he's trying to." She nodded. She said, "Do I have to see him?" I said, "No. Not unless you want to." She thought about it. She said, "Maybe someday, but not now." I said, "That's okay. We don't have to decide today." She hugged me. She said, "Thank you for protecting me, Mommy." I held her. I said, "Always." 2 weeks later, my mother called. I didn't block her number anymore. I answered. She said, "Can we talk?" I said, "That depends. Are you calling to apologize or to make excuses?" She was quiet. Then she said, "I'm calling to apologize. We met for coffee. Just the 2 of us." She cried. She said she was ashamed. She said she should have stopped him. She said she was scared. I didn't tell her it was okay, because it wasn't. But I told her I appreciated her honesty. She asked if she could see Emma. I said, "Eventually, but not yet." She nodded. She said, "I understand." I left that coffee shop feeling lighter. Not healed, but lighter. My brother and sister never reached out. Not once. I didn't chase them. I didn't beg. I let them go. Because family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. It's about protecting the people who need you, and they didn't show up. Emma started therapy in February, a child psychologist who specialized in trauma and adoption. She went once a week. Some days were hard. Some days she cried. But slowly she started to smile more, draw more, talk more. And one night in March, she stopped asking if she was really mine forever. Because she finally believed it. Spring came quietly. Emma's 10th birthday was in April. I asked her how she wanted to celebrate. She said, "Just us." So we went to the aquarium, we got pizza. We watched her favorite movie. She blew out candles on a homemade cake. She smiled the whole day. No tension, no fear, just joy. Her therapist said she was making progress. She said Emma was learning to separate her worth from other people's opinions. She said that takes some adults a lifetime. Emma was doing it at 10. I was proud of her. So proud. In May, my mother asked again if she could see Emma. I talked to Emma first. I said, "Grandma wants to visit. How do you feel about that?" Emma thought about it. She said, "Will Grandpa be there?" I said, "No, just Grandma." She said, "Okay, I can try." We met at a park, neutral ground. My mother brought a kite. Emma loved kites. They flew it together. I sat on a bench and watched. My mother didn't push. She didn't over-explain. She just spent time with her. When it was time to go, Emma hugged her. My mother cried. Emma said, "It's okay, Grandma. You can visit again." My mother looked at me. I nodded. Slowly, carefully, my mother started rebuilding. She came over once a month. She brought books. She asked about school. She listened. She didn't make excuses for my father. She didn't ask me to forgive him. She just showed up. And that mattered. My father, on the other hand, stayed away. He didn't call. He didn't write. He honored the agreement. And honestly, that was enough. I didn't need his presence. I needed his absence. By summer, Emma was thriving. She joined a kids' art class. She made friends. She laughed more. She started talking about the future, about what she wanted to be when she grew up. A teacher, an artist, a mom. She said, "I want to adopt kids too, Mommy, so they know they're loved." I cried when she said that. Happy tears. Proud tears. One evening in late June, Emma and I were sitting on the porch. The sun was setting. She was drawing. I was reading. Out of nowhere, she said, "Mommy, do you think Grandpa will ever really love me?" I put my book down. I looked at her. I said, "I don't know, baby. But I know this. You don't need him to. You are loved. By me. By your friends. By your teacher. By Grandma. By people who see you for who you are. And that's enough." She smiled. She said, "Yeah, it is. That moment. Right there. That was my victory. Not the legal agreement. Not the apology letter. Not the money for therapy. This. My daughter. Smiling. Believing she was enough." In July, my best friend threw a little party for Emma. She invited a few kids from her art class. We had a backyard BBQ. Emma ran around with the other kids. She played. She laughed. She belonged. I stood there watching her, and I realized something. I'd spent years trying to make my family accept us, trying to earn a seat at their table, trying to prove we were worthy. But the whole time, I should have been building our own table, and now I had. Emma and I. We were our own family, complete, whole, enough. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. It said, "I'm so proud of you." I didn't respond right away. I just watched Emma, hair wild, grass-stained knees, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. I texted back, "Thank you." Later that night, after everyone left, Emma and I cleaned up. She was tired but happy. She said, "That was the best day ever." I said, "I'm glad, baby." She hugged me. She said, "I love our life, Mommy." I said, "Me too." After she went to bed, I sat on the porch alone. I thought about Christmas, about that dining room, about my father's hand on her shoulder, about the sound of her hitting the floor. And I thought about everything that came after. The lawyer, the letter, the fight, the boundary, the healing. I didn't regret any of it, not 1 second. Because I'd done what I was supposed to do. I protected my child, and I'd do it 1,000 times over. By August, life had found a rhythm, a peaceful one. Emma started 5th grade in September. New school year, new teacher, new opportunities. She was nervous the first day. I walked her to the classroom. She held my hand tight. I knelt down. I said, "You've got this." She nodded. She said, "I know." And she walked in. Head high. Confident. I stood in the hallway and watched her through the window. She sat down. She smiled at the kid next to her. She opened her notebook. And I knew. She was going to be okay. I was going to be okay. We were going to be okay. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was my father. His voice was quiet, shaky. He said, "Sarah, I need to talk to you." I didn't hang up. I didn't yell. I just said, "I'm listening." He said, "I've been going to therapy. Individual therapy. The court didn't require it, but I've been going." I didn't respond. He continued. He said, "I've been talking about a lot of things. My childhood, my father, the way I was raised, and I'm starting to understand how wrong I was." I stayed silent. He said, "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect Emma to forgive me. But I want you to know I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to understand." I took a breath. I said, "Why are you telling me this?" He said, "Because I want to be in her life. Someday. If she'll let me." I said, "That's not up to me. It's up to her." He said, "I know." I said, "And right now, she's not ready." He said, "I understand." There was a pause. Then he said, "I'm sorry, Sarah. For everything. Not just Christmas. For all of it. For making you feel like you had to earn your place. For making Emma feel like she didn't belong. For being a bad father. And a worse grandfather." I didn't cry. I didn't forgive him. But I said, "Thank you for saying that." He said, "I mean it." I said, "Then keep going to therapy, keep working on yourself. And maybe one day, if Emma wants to see you, we'll talk." He said, "Okay." I hung up. I sat in my car for 10 minutes. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt done. Done fighting. Done explaining. Done carrying his guilt. I drove home. I picked Emma up from school. She talked the whole way home about her day, about her teacher, about the science project they were starting. She was happy, excited, alive. That night, I didn't tell her about the call. She didn't need to know. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because healing isn't about the people who hurt you apologizing. It's about moving forward anyway. A few weeks later, my mother came over for dinner. Emma helped me cook. We made spaghetti, garlic bread, salad. My mother sat at the table and watched us. She said, "You two are a great team." Emma beamed. She said, "Mommy's the best." My mother smiled. She said, "She really is." After dinner, Emma showed my mother her latest drawings. My mother asked questions. She listened. She didn't compare Emma to my brother's kids or my sister's kids. She just saw Emma, and Emma noticed. Later, after my mother left, Emma said, "I think Grandma really likes me now." I said, "I think she always did. She just didn't know how to show it." Emma nodded. She said, "People are complicated." I laughed. I said, "Yes, they are." She said, "But we're not. We're simple. We're just us." I hugged her. I said, "Yeah, baby. We're just us. And that's perfect." That night, I sat on the edge of Emma's bed. She was almost asleep. I said, "Emma, I need you to know something." She opened her eyes. I said, "No matter what happens, no matter who comes in or out of our lives, you and me, we're forever. Nothing changes that." She smiled. She said, "I know, Mommy." I kissed her forehead. I turned off the light. I walked to my room. And for the first time in a long time, I felt peace. Real peace. The kind that comes from knowing you did the right thing, even when it was hard, even when it hurt. even when it cost you everything. October brought cool air and falling leaves. Emma and I started a new tradition. Every Saturday morning, we'd go to the farmer's market. We'd buy fresh bread, apple cider, flowers for the kitchen table. It was simple, but it was ours. One Saturday, we ran into my sister. She was there with her kids. We made eye contact. She looked uncomfortable. I didn't look away. She walked over. She said, "Hi." I said, "Hi." Her kids ran off to look at pumpkins. She said, "Can we talk?" I said, "Sure." We stepped to the side. Emma stayed close. My sister looked at her. She said, "Hi, Emma." Emma said, "Hi, Aunt Lisa." My sister's face softened. She said, "You've gotten so big." Emma smiled politely. Then my sister looked at me. She said, "I'm sorry. For Christmas. For not saying anything. For not standing up." I didn't speak right away. I let her words sit there. Then I said, "Why now?" She said, "Because I can't stop thinking about it. Because my daughter asked me what I would do if someone hurt her. And I realized I didn't protect Emma. And I should have." I nodded. I said, "Yeah, you should have." She looked down. She said, "I know it's too late, but I needed to say it." I said, "It's not too late, but it's going to take time." She said, "I understand." Emma tugged on my hand. She said, "Mommy, can we get cider?" I said, "Yeah, baby. Let's go." I looked at my sister. I said, "If you want to be part of her life, you have to show up. Not just say it. Show it." She nodded. She said, "I will." We walked away. Emma said, "Is Aunt Lisa okay?" I said, "She's trying to be." Over the next few months, my sister did show up. She texted. She invited us to her daughter's birthday party. She included Emma. She asked her questions. She made an effort. It wasn't perfect. But it was something. By November, my mother asked if we'd come to Thanksgiving. Just her, me, and Emma. Small, quiet. I asked Emma. She said, "Okay." We went. It was different. Softer. My mother cooked. Emma helped. We sat at the table. Just the three of us. My mother said grace. She thanked God for family. For second chances. For Emma. Emma smiled. We ate. We talked. We laughed. It wasn't the big family gathering I'd imagined as a kid. But it was better. Because it was real. That night, driving home, Emma said, "I had fun." I said, "Me too." She said, "Do you think we'll ever have a big family again?" I said, "Maybe. But if we don't, that's okay too. Because we have each other. And that's enough." She said, "Yeah, it is." December came. 1 year since that Christmas. Emma and I decorated our little house. We put up a tree. We strung lights. We baked cookies. On Christmas Eve, we stayed home. Just us. We watched movies. We drank hot chocolate. We opened one present each. Emma got a new easel. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. On Christmas morning, my mother came over. She stayed for breakfast. It was calm, peaceful. No tension, no fear, just love. Later that day, Emma said, "This is my favorite Christmas ever." I said, "Mine too." And I meant it, because a year ago I was begging for a seat at someone else's table. And now, I had my own. My father never came back into our lives. He sent a card on Emma's birthday. A short note. Kind words. Emma read it. She said, "That's nice." But she didn't ask to see him. And I didn't push. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some distances are healthy. By the end of the year, Emma's therapist said she was doing remarkably well. She said Emma had processed the trauma. She said she was resilient, strong, loving. She said, "You raised an incredible kid." I said, "She raised herself. I just loved her." The therapist smiled. She said, "That's all she needed." And it was. So that's the story. That's how a single moment on Christmas Day changed everything. How 4 words turned into a legal case. How my daughter learned she was worth fighting for. and how I learned that protecting her meant letting go of people I thought I needed. Today, Emma is 11. She's happy. She's confident. She knows she's loved. And my father? He's still working on himself. Maybe one day Emma will want to see him. Maybe she won't. Either way, I'll support her. Because that's what real family does. My mother is part of our lives now. My sister is trying. My brother still hasn't reached out. And that's okay. I don't need everyone. I just need the people who show up. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future stories. Leave a comment and let me know what you think. And remember, you don't have to keep fighting for a seat at a table that doesn't want you. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away and build your own. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself and protect the people you love.